Today we have an emotional but inspirational story of a dad who loses his 18-year-old son and the things that take place after that. You know, Romans teaches us that God can take all things and make them work together for good. My guest today took a horrible incident, the loss of a son, and God is using him to do great things all over.
Barry Adkins lives with his wife Beverly in Arizona. After the devastating loss of his 18-year-old son, Kevin, to one night of binge drinking, Barry has made it his life's goal to make something good come out of it, to educate, communicate, and inspire about the dangers of binge drinking. His compelling, down-to-earth father's approach touches parents and teens alike. In an effort to raise awareness of the dangers of alcohol abuse, Barry walked with his son's ashes in a backpack from Arizona to Montana, sharing their story. Please welcome father, author, hero, Barry Adkins, as he joins me to talk about Kevin's last walk.
Hey, welcome, Barry. It's so good to have you with me.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, you and I have already talked together and did one program, but for those who are watching today, I want them to hear the story again, and then we're going to talk a little bit about dealing with adversity and the things that we can learn, forgiveness, some of those powerful truths that really helped you to get through this. But Kevin was your 18-year-old son.
He was my 18-year-old son. He was the baby of the family.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3.
Okay.
And never had any problems with him. He had just graduated from high school, decided to move out on his own. His friends threw a housewarming party for him the night that he moved out on his own. He drank too much. He started doing shots. He passed out. His friends laid him on his side in case he vomited. They came in and shaved his head and his legs while he was passed out. One of his friends was worried about him, so he came back in to check on him, and at 4 a.m. found him blue. The first calls indicated difficulty breathing to 911. The next calls were not breathing. He died alone in a hospital while I slept peacefully in my bed.
Wow, I mean, he sure wasn't expecting that.
No.
And his friends weren't expecting that. This was going to be cool. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's a coming-of-age party. We're going to shave his head. It's going to be a story we're going to kick around with our kids for years, is how they're thinking.
Yep.
Because kids just think nothing's going to go bad.
10 feet tall and bulletproof.
10 feet tall and bulletproof. Then the next morning, the police were at your door.
Yes.
Filled you in.
Yeah, so basically my wife and I, it was a Sunday morning, nice quiet Sunday morning. We're sitting there drinking our coffee, reading the paper, and the doorbell rings, and we're thinking, who's coming over today? It's Sunday morning. I opened the door to see 2 police officers and someone in plain clothes at the door. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it had to have to do with a neighbor or a dog or something. There's really no other reason for a police officer to be at my house at 8:30 on a Sunday morning. But he didn't laugh at any of the jokes that I told when he came in. He walked in and...
Oh, you were joking around with him?
Oh, yeah. Oh. Yeah, I thought this was just...
And he's not
no,
taking
he's
it at
not
all.
having any of this.
He knows what he has to talk to you about.
You know, and in hindsight, obviously, I should have had some clues, but as a parent, I never... You think about the possibility you could lose a child, but you don't. I mean,
no one wants to sit around thinking about that all the time.
You know, you don't really think about that. They came in, they said there'd been an accident, and we're trying to understand. He was very quiet. He said there'd been an accident, and then he said, your son is dead. And for a moment, I thought he was talking about one of Bev's sons from a previous marriage, and she asked who, and he said it was my son, Kevin, and they handed me his driver's license. And as a parent, until that moment, you're holding out hope that there's this big mistake. It's AT, it's not AD. It's 3 streets down. It's another city. It's the Kevin Adkins that lives in Phoenix, not in Gilbert.
Right. But once he handed you his license, there's his picture. his name and address.
Yep,
It must have hit you like a ton of bricks.
it did. You know he's gone and he's not coming back, and there's just no way to prepare for that moment. As I always say, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, and there's really nothing you can do to prepare for that.
Did you grow up in church? Do you have a faith in God?
I grew up a Catholic, and I've been attending a non-denominational church. Really enjoyed it. It was a pastor who, I always enjoy pastors who, when they get done with a service, I can sum it up in one sentence.
Yeah.
And so Kevin had attended church regularly. We all attended church. So.
Now, you and I were talking about, off just before the show, talking about adversity. So, no family wants it.
No.
No family I mean, we would just love to go through life with nothing going wrong, with no fights, no adversity, no storms, but that's probably an unrealistic look at life.
That's right.
Talk to me a little bit about adversity. What do
So,
you mean by adversity?
what I mean is that, in my opinion, our lives are defined by how we respond to adversity, and helping children understand that you're not going to go through life with no problems. You are going to face adversity, and quite often how you respond to that adversity will define your life. Are you going to turn to drugs and alcohol, or are you going to try to make something good come from that adversity?
Okay, you just said something that I think really ties well in. When adversity comes our way, and our kids need to know that life does have stuff. I mean, the Bible teaches storms and etc. But a lot of people do go to alcohol and drugs to cope.
Yes.
I mean, that's not what Kevin was doing. He was young. But when you talk about the topic of alcohol, I mean, I was chatting with a lady the other day who looks after a drug rehab, and she has an alarming statistics of wonderful middle class, upper class finances, women who are at home who just have a glass of wine, but then they have 2 and they have 3 to handle the boredom of the day, and the epidemic of alcoholism coming into seemingly healthy families. So where you go to cope is a huge issue.
Yeah, you need to learn to try to make good things come from it, and that's been my mantra from day one, is to try to make something good come from this tragedy, because the most you can hope for when something bad happens is to make something good come from it. And people ask me many times after Kevin died, what can I do? And when I talk to students, that's another thing I tell them. If you want to help me, try to make something good come from this tragedy. Because, you know, I can't do anything to bring Kevin back. I don't care how much money you give me, it's not going to make me feel any better. But trying to make something good come from a tragedy or from something bad that's happened, you see that in the news all the time. People who, they want justice for their family. You know, this person murdered my child and I want justice for him. Justice isn't going to do him any good. I understand the need for justice,
right,
but making something good come from something bad, in my opinion, it's the most you can hope for.
That's the most powerful. People who spend the rest of their life trying to get justice from that situation would almost be living in a cloud the entire time. But you, in going and taking the story and impacting lives, get to see the good.
Yeah, I look at it as, if you look at some of the things that have happened, Mothers Against Drunk Driving was started by a woman who lost her daughter.
It's huge now, isn't it?
Yeah. John Walsh, America's Most Wanted.
That's true.
His son was brutally murdered, but they took something horrible and they made something good come from it. And those are great examples of doing just that.
I like what you just said earlier when you said that when adversity comes your way, you make a decision. Yeah. What good? Don't sit around waiting, saying, well, let's hope something good comes. You literally said, I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
Where did you speak for the very first time? Tell me about that.
The very first time was that I spoke about it was at a treatment facility, and I have to say I did a horrible job, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Because it was only 2 or 3 months after he had died. I started crying several times, which I still do occasionally. Sure. It's an emotional story. But I knew that I had to start somewhere. And that's the thing, people say, well, Barry, you probably were a public speaker before. I don't think so. I never was involved in any public speaking. was involved in the church, but only from the flipping pancakes and
Right.
burgers and that kind of thing. And there's another level of involvement when you start doing these kinds of things. And the pastor at my church said something that I'll never forget here a few weeks ago. He said that his prayer for the congregation is that God would call you to do something that terrifies you.
Wow. Step out of your comfort zone and go
Yeah.
do something that freaks you right out.
Freaks you right out.
You know, that sounds like a Bible verse where God
It probably
can do
is.
exceedingly abundantly above.
See, that's my wife always straightens me out on Bible verses, but yes, I don't doubt that somewhere in there it says exactly that.
How long ago did this incident take place?
Took place in 2005.
2005. So for the last number of years, you have been speaking to high school groups. What groups do you speak to if people want to get a hold of you?
Any. I can tailor this for high school. I do treatment facilities, churches. I do all of them.
Okay. So adversity, take whatever's going on in your life. Instead of sitting around and maybe blaming God or hunting for justice, and what you did was say, I'm going to make something good come out of this. That seems to be how you've handled this.
It is how I handled it, but you mentioned blaming God. Don't misunderstand me here. When Kevin died, I was angry with God.
Sure you were.
I had a lot of conversations with God walking around the backyard of my house, and just I didn't understand why he took my son instead of me.
Yeah.
And why me? I never did anything, why my son?
Did you ever go through like grief counseling and understanding the steps?
Never did, because early on, as I said, I understood that I wanted to make something good come from it, and actually in the book I talk about where that idea came from. I'll leave it to the book, but I will tell you it's not what you think it is. It's
Wow.
not my idea.
Wow. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the walk. There's a whole
Yeah,
story there
that's fun.
we'd love to explore.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
As a parent, you play that over and over in your head, and I am sure there was something I could have done differently.
Leon is passionate about making devotions part of your everyday life. He's written an exclusive daily devotional just for you. Receive Devoted to your email inbox daily and follow along with Leon's practical, easy to understand teachings about faith. Get into God's Word with fresh vision. Go to miraclechannel.ca to sign up for Devoted.
We're back with Barry. Now, tell me this story now, because we touched on it a little bit earlier that you had to go pick up his ashes.
Yeah.
Start there and fill me in.
Well, as I said, that was definitely the low point for me. I knew that he was dead, but when you go to a funeral home and you sit down in that nice leather chair and they come in and put an urn in front of you.
Is this after the funeral?
Yeah, this is after the funeral. You realize that he really is gone. I mean, until that time, for me, it was wow, this is Kevin. This is the child that I held and that I burped and that I coached his baseball and his soccer and football and all of those things. He's in this urn. And I knew at that point that I wanted to try to make something good come from it. We struggled with what to do with those ashes. But Kevin had always talked about, we lived in Arizona at the time, Kevin had always talked about wanting to move to Montana someday and buy a ranch. Because I had grown up in Montana, and he always said that if I would just buy a ranch up there, he'd go up and house sit for me. So I decided that I wanted to take his ashes to Montana. In my convoluted mind, the other thing, his favorite movie was Lonesome Dove.
Okay.
Have you seen that movie? So you know how that movie ends with Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall, and Robert Duvall passes away, and he decides to bring him back to Texas to bury him where he was the happiest. In the movie, they do it on horseback. I decided to walk because if I did it on horseback, I probably would never have made it. So I decided to walk to Montana where he was the happiest and leave his ashes there. In the beginning, I thought it was going to be kind of a Forrest Gump thing. Where
How far is this?
It's 1,400 miles.
Oh, okay. We're not talking a little quick walk here.
No, we're not. We're talking about something that's going to take a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And in the beginning, I thought I would just do it on my own, but as it evolved, as the idea evolved, I decided that I would do the speaking along the way, and so I partnered with an organization called Not My Kid. They set up the speaking engagement, so logistically, you can imagine I have to be,
You better make
you know,
a
at
walk
this school.
to the next town.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we stayed in hotels every night. You know, I was staying under a bridge every night. No way. I'm not going to do that. But you know, we had to logistically make sure we were at the right points in time, and I would walk and then go speak and then come back and walk a little more. Met a lot of wonderful, wonderful people along the way.
When you're walking, I mean, did you have a sign up, or did people know why? You look like just a hitchhiker walking down the road, or?
I looked like a hitchhiker walking down the road, yes. There was a truck that my wife would meet me every 3 or 4 miles, but people would stop every day and ask me if I wanted to ride. Every day they would stop and ask me if I wanted to ride. If it was raining, 6, 8, 10 times in a day, people would stop and ask if I wanted to ride. And when they saw the truck, which did have Kevin's last walk on it, they would stop, and everybody's got a story about alcohol.
Interesting.
Everybody's, you know, they'd stop.
So you would
and-
share the story with the
Yeah.
person you're talking to, and then everyone would have a story.
Yeah,
So alcohol has touched almost everybody.
yeah. And for me, you know, they would quite often offer you donations and that kind of thing, and I didn't do it for that. Money means nothing to me. But my wife always says, you know, you can't deny them that joy. And I'll never forget a guy, I was up at Lake Powell by Grand Canyon, and this guy in like a 1972 Datsun, an older guy, he got out and he started talking to me, and we talked for a long time about his story. And at the end of it, he handed me $5 and said, make sure you get yourself a sandwich when you get back to town. And this guy, there's no way he could afford that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to take the money. But you can't deny those people that joy.
true.
And it's stories like that. When you get out on the road, you meet a lot of neat people.
So you're walking from Phoenix to Montana. Where in Montana were you?
Kalispell, Montana.
Kalispell?
Kalispell. It's up by
Kalispell.
Glacier Park.
Okay, now, is that where you guys went as a family? Or
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. So, and I have some property up there, so we wanted to leave his ashes on that property.
So where did you leave them?
I left them on the property.
Did you bury them, or did you
No.
sprinkle them?
No, they're actually still in the container that I carried them. I had to have a special container made because a plastic urn. I didn't want to carry some heavy urn in my
Yeah.
backpack for
Yeah.
1,400 miles, so we left them there. We actually had a ceremony at the end. There was a public ceremony. When we, after that, family and friends went up to the property, and we all gathered around and we all held hands, and I said, we're going to go around and we're going to finish this sentence. I am thankful for. And everyone finished that sentence, and then we went and had a picnic.
What are you thankful for?
I'm thankful that God gave me the ability to do this. You know, I tell everybody, I am short, bald, pudgy, and if I can make something like this happen, imagine what somebody that's got a little bit of talent can do. I'm just thankful for what He did give me, the ability to make it happen, and for what I still have. I still have children and grandchildren, and that's the thing, is that I still have those things, and I'm thankful for them.
How does your wife cope with this? You seem to have a very specific goal of bringing good from this. Are you together on that, or is she
Oh yeah.
different about it? Or?
Next to every good man is an even better woman.
Oh, come on. Ain't that the
And
truth?
I am going to tell you that she, wives tell you things that are kind of entertaining, right? because I always tell her, is this really the right thing for me to be doing, and that kind of thing. And she says, well, the Bible does say that God chooses the unimpressive to do his work.
Oh, she loves you.
But yeah, she straightens me out on things like when I told a story one time, how you try to tie things in a story together, and I talked about how Kevin had sat down in this brown chair and talked about how his life was beginning, and then the police officer stood in front of that same brown chair. As wives will do, I walked off stage and I was talking to her and I said, well, what did you think about how I tied it together? And she goes, yeah, it's not brown, it's gold.
Where does forgiveness fit into all this? You made a point in one of our conversations. Who did you have to forgive?
Me.
Wow.
And when you look around, people harbor that. They struggle to forgive themselves for something that they're sure they could have done something about. I see things on TV, guys coming back from the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the first thing I think is that they struggle with forgiving themselves for what happened over there.
Wow.
And I really believe that it takes a lot of humility to understand that, it's not about you, it's about God, and it's about accepting the fact that you have to forgive yourself. I mean, Jesus forgave us for our sins before they even happened.
It's true. Is there some kind of an easy way you found to do that? A process?
Well,
what helped you to forgive yourself?
1,400 miles with a lot of time to think.
The walk helped.
A lot of time to think about things like that. And I mentioned that God is in charge. Everyone nods their head when you say that, and I did before too. The pastor talked about that all the time. I knew it here, but I didn't know it here. And for me, accepting it in my heart that it really ain't about you, Slick. It's about him. He's the one that's got a plan for you, and whether you like it or not, this is what he's going to have you do.
So you had to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Were there specific things, or just how would you package that? Is there specific things you had to forgive yourself about, or just this general?
The specific thing is he died, and I didn't. And there has to have been something. What that one was, I don't know. As a parent, you play that over and over in your head, and I am sure there was something I could have done differently.
And there isn't.
And there isn't.
Because you're not God.
Yes.
And you could have done something to stop this.
That is correct.
That's what you're telling me.
Yes.
And so you forget. Was it a one moment thing, or was it an ongoing process of 1,400 miles and how many days?
It was 1,400 miles in 4 months to accept that, and that's why I tell people, if you want to save yourself a few pairs of shoes, really think about that and accept the fact that he's in charge.
Did you have to forgive God?
Yeah, because as I said, I was angry with him. I didn't understand why he didn't take me. I mean, you're a parent.
Yeah.
Would you lay down your life for your children? Would
Absolutely.
you tell God, take me, don't take them?
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was. Backup time. You don't have to go very far, just the last night. Take me, let him live.
How long did you stay in that anger mode of where you literally?
For me, it was a few months.
Yeah.
Until I really came to grips with trying to make something good come from it. But it's a process. There's no, I'm sure you've talked to people who've lost children, and there's a lot of anger there. Yeah. And self-pity and...
I love what you said today when you said it is making something good come out of it. It seems like that's what took your whole focus.
Yeah.
Off of the pain, the heartache, and now you've got a mission.
Yeah.
And it's that mission, it's that goal that's making you reach out and do something good with it.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me on.
We'll be right back.
Born to pastors in Saskatchewan, Canada, Leon Fontaine grew up in the local church. As a young man, he became a paramedic and pastored alongside his father for several years part-time. Leon and Sally moved to Winnipeg in 1994 after being called to a church of about 200, Springs Church. The church began to experience exponential growth and now welcomes over 10,000 each week in its 6 sites in 4 cities across Western Canada. In 2010, Leon was asked to come on as CEO of the Miracle Channel. Since this time, the 24/7 Christian station has experienced an increase in quality, reputation, and influence around the world. In addition to his weekly preaching program, Leon hosts a daily talk show featuring guests from around the world. Leon travels extensively around the globe, training leaders. His practical teaching style touches on all areas: home, career, church, business, and success in life. It's in this vein that Leon coined the phrase, Spirit Contemporary, the Holy Spirit working through contemporary people. Signs, wonders, and miracles happen every day because people have an understanding of the principles of God. Tenacious faith should never compromise your ability to influence people, neighbors, co-workers, family, because people are the lifeblood of the local church, and Jesus is building his church.
Have you read this week's newspaper column by Leon Fontaine? Each week, Leon's columns appear in both the Winnipeg Sun and the Calgary Sun. Leon believes that God has designed all of us to be leaders in our sphere of influence and that wisdom and knowledge are essential to reach your full destiny. In these articles, Leon shares crucial leadership lessons, how to deal with people, and how to build relationships that take you to the next level. Growing leaders is one of Leon's greatest passions. You can read both editions today by visiting leonfontaine.com.
It's a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you. You know, we're talking about a really difficult topic, losing somebody you love. And are you going to get locked up in anger? Are you going to stay and let your whole life and the rest of your life be known by this tragedy, or are you going to go into something good with it? And I really want to encourage you, because it was interesting as Barry was talking, and he said that as he was walking the 1,400-mile road this trip, everybody had a story. And so I'm sure, like I do, that as you're watching the program today, it probably takes your mind back to a story, something that took place that happened to you that really hurt. Maybe ask yourself, am I stuck? Am I still stuck emotionally? Am I still stuck relationally? Am I still stuck with this thing holding me back from something good that my life could do? And I want to encourage you to take Barry's advice and make something good. Just on purpose, get up. He says, Leon, I don't have any talents. He's got lots of talents, but he decided to speak when he wasn't a public speaker. Breaks down and cries as he's trying to tell the story, but determined to make something good come out of what was such a painful situation. Why don't you start doing that? I encourage you to get this book, Kevin's Last Walk. It'll make you cry, it'll make you laugh, and I think it'll challenge you to do something really great with your life.